Do-It-Yourselfers. This is Dr. Tracy Ariza from Oh the Things We'll Make. For those who have been following me for a while, you probably know that I am a non-practicing dentist turned blogger who originally lived in Michigan in the United States and is now living on the Spanish Riviera. I've had several people request that I formulate a recipe for a homemade toothpaste tablet. And I had actually already bought some molds to give it a try, and I had bought my calcium carbonate and was ready to go, and then came the confinement, and I just got so overwhelmed with so many things that I just completely forgot about it and never got around to making this. But the other day, I saw the molds and I'm like, I really want to give this a try and get this out there for the people who really wanted me to make this. Lately, I have been making a homemade toothpaste that doesn't use any clays just because I don't like the mouthfeel as much of the clays, and I'm also worried about any heavy metal contamination that they might have. I'm going to be using basically the same ingredient proportions for this recipe. The main difference between this and my homemade toothpaste, that you can actually see the video for that tutorial here, is that instead of using glycerin to make the paste and to give the perfect paste consistency and to add moisture without worrying about needing to use a preservative, today we're just going to be using water to moisten and hold all of the ingredients together, because we want the final product to completely dry, and that will allow us to have this very solid toothpaste tablet. Now, if you aren't familiar with toothpaste tablets, and to be quite honest, despite having studied dentistry, I was not familiar with toothpaste tablets until my readers requested them. And I actually went out and bought a couple of different brands just to try them out myself and just to take a look at the different ingredients and see which things I wanted to incorporate into my recipe. Toothpaste tablets are very convenient for traveling. Not only are they lighter because they don't have any of the liquid, but you don't have to worry about any of the liquid limitations for air travel when you are taking these tablets. Here you can see that I stored my homemade toothpaste tablets in a glass jar, but if you are going to be traveling, I recommend using something like a metal tin or even just a plastic Tupperware type small container. And what's great for traveling, if you can find a really tiny container, you really only have to bring as many as you're going to be needing throughout your trip. The main base of this toothpaste tablet is going to be calcium carbonate. I like calcium carbonate because it is mildly abrasive, it has a very mild flavor, and it just gives a really nice texture. It will mildly polish off surface stains, and it also has the calcium that may help with remineralization of your teeth, which is great if you want to avoid cavities from moving further along. It helps protect your teeth, helps repair the outer surfaces if you've already had a little bit of decay. Along with the 50 grams of calcium carbonate, I am going to be using 20 grams of baking soda. Baking soda is another mild abrasive that is also cleansing. It will also help polish the surface stains on the teeth, and it's just often used in many toothpaste and tooth products. To add a little bit of sweetness and also for its cavity fighting abilities, I am going to be adding 10 grams of xylitol. Now, you don't want to switch out the xylitol for another sweetener, especially nothing with a sugar that could cause tooth decay. Other sweeteners probably don't have the same cavity fighting abilities, and some might actually even make this product more prone to decay. So you can completely avoid using any sweetener at all. If you do use one, I do recommend xylitol. While toothpaste tablets are probably not the most convenient for animals, I just want to throw it out there that if you are making any sort of toothpaste for your pets, to leave out the xylitol because it is known to be toxic to certain animals. To add a bit of freshness and flavor and just give you that fresh feeling in your mouth, I am going to be adding a few drops of a food-grade peppermint essential oil. If you don't like peppermint, there are other essential oils that you could add. Another popular one for toothpaste is clove oil or spearmint. But if you don't want to use an essential oil, that's fine. You don't need to use any at all. To make this a more professional grade toothpaste tablet and to add a little bit extra cleansing ability and just to give you that foaming sensation that you find in most commercial toothpaste, I am going to be adding a mild surfactant. Today I'm going to be using sodium cocoyl glutamate. I chose this surfactant because I noticed it was the one most commonly used in the commercial toothpaste that I found at the natural supermarket here in my area. You can probably use pretty much any natural surfactant that you have on hand. Most commercial main brand toothpaste use sodium lauryl sulfate as the surfactant in their toothpaste. Well, I don't have a problem using sodium lauryl sulfate in something like my homemade laundry detergent, and you can take a look at that there. I don't ever use it in my homemade cosmetics. The reason for that is it's an anionic surfactant that is very potent in its cleansing abilities, but it's also quite harsh and it can lead to irritation of your skin. And if you're using it in a product like toothpaste, it can irritate the gums and lead to things like the formation of canker sores. So I want to avoid that. I'm going to be using sodium cocoyl glutamate. I'm just using a small amount. One of the toothpaste tablets that I bought ended up making my mouth foam up so much when I used it that I didn't like that. Now, if you do like that, you can add a little bit more surfactant. That's one of the great things about making this yourself is that you can completely adjust this recipe to suit your taste. And then the last ingredient is going to be water. I'm using distilled water, but you can use a filtered water if you like. This is just going to hold all the ingredients together and form a paste that once it dehydrates will evaporate away and you'll be left with this dry toothpaste tablet. So the water will be evaporated away and we don't have to worry about adding any sort of preservative to this product. Making this is really simple. I'm going to be mixing all these ingredients together here in a glass jar, and then we will be adding them to a silicone mold. This silicone mold is my favorite for making toothpaste tablets. I just find this size to be perfect. This was meant to be a tray to make ice chips. I had bought this other silicone tray that I thought I was gonna like because I liked the cylinder shape of this mold. The problem being is these are quite large. I find them to be too large for toothpaste tablets. While you could just fill it up halfway, that would be quite difficult to do. I just find it very easy to pour the paste over this tray and just use my spatula to completely fill up all the compartments. There's not space between these compartments, which is why it's so nice to have these cube-shaped molds. And it's very convenient for making the toothpaste tablet. So this is the type of mold that I recommend. If you don't have a mold and you don't want to buy one, you could also pipe out little drops of the toothpaste onto a baking tray. You could either use a piping bag or something like this deco pen, or even just use a plastic bag where you snip off the end and just squeeze out drop sizes over a baking tray that has been lined with parchment paper. But I personally like the convenience of using the tray. I just like the way that the final product looks in the end. It looks a lot more like a professional grade toothpaste tablets. When I made my first batch, I added too much water and I thought it was going to take forever to dry out, because the one advantage to making drops on a tray is that there's a lot more surface area exposed to the air and they will dry out more quickly. And I thought with only one surface exposed on this mold, it would take forever to dry out. But I set this out in the sun and it actually dried within the day. It dried enough that I was able to unmold my drops and then leave them out for another day to fully dry. And I found that it was really easy to use. Now, if you're making this in a humid environment or it's cooler or you don't have access to sun, you could also try speeding the process up by dehydrating these in a dehydrator or in your oven at the lowest temperature. But I have found that I was able to dry these quite quickly just with a little bit of air circulation and sunlight. With all of that explained, let's get to the easy process of putting this recipe together. First, we're going to combine all of the dry ingredients, starting with the calcium carbonate. This is actually easier in a bowl. I was using a glass jar in case I wanted to use an immersion blender, but I didn't use it anyways, and the bowl is just easier. Here I'm adding the baking soda. At this point, I added 20 grams of baking soda, but I've since made the recipe with a little more and it works well. This is xylitol, 10 grams. You can also add a little bit more if you want it to be a little bit sweeter. Try to mix the ingredients well, just so that you have all of your ingredients well dispersed in the mixture, and then you can start adding in the essential oil. I added a couple of drops of mint, but I've also used anise and it's delicious. This is the sodium cocoyl glutamate, our surfactant. I also like to add those in and combine them well before I start adding in the water. I'm going to be using this Liquide Deco Art pen to add in the water little by little. When I tried to pour in my water, I poured in too much and I ended up with a really thin liquidy paste. It's fine, you can do that, but it will take longer for all of the liquid to evaporate off. You just want to make sure that if you're using something like a jar, a lot of the powder will stick to the bottom, so you want to make sure that you get all of the powder incorporated. That's why I was turning this and making sure that I got all of the powder from the bottom and edges. I am adding the powder that was left over from my last batch. You will notice that a little bit of powder will fall off when you unmold, and you can save that for your next batch and add it in or just discard it. Now when I add this to my mold, I like to use a spatula to help push it in, but a lot of times there will still be air bubbles underneath. So to make sure that you really fill the mold, just tap down on the molds while you're filling it, and then the material will just go fill them up perfectly. I tried to fill up as many to full capacity as I can. This time I ended up with 9 rows and 9 columns of toothpaste tablets, so that was 81 tablets that I got out of this mixture. Once you've allowed your molds to dry, then you can start pulling the tablets apart, and then you can unmold them into some sort of container. So you can see there was a little bit of powder falling off from in between each of the compartments, and I saved that and I added it to my next batch, but you don't have to do that. And then you can just store it in some sort of airtight container. If you are going to be traveling, you can try a metal tin like this, or just use a small glass jar, and then your toothpaste tablets are ready to use. Using toothpaste tablets is simple. You just place one in your mouth and you chew on it, and then once you've chewed it up, you can just use it as normal toothpaste. I'm using an electric toothbrush here, and I really sped up the video, but I normally just glide this along each of the teeth surfaces, and I also go along the gum line and just let it do its circular motions along the gum line. That's all there is to it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I would love for you to subscribe to this channel. Until next time.